Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something pretty huge in the world of AI safety, the Claude Constitution from Anthropic. We're going to break down this big question. How do you actually build a moral compass for an AI? So, let's just jump right in with the big one, the question that, honestly, every AI lab is trying to figure out right now. If you're building something that could literally change the world, how on earth do you write the rulebook for it?
To really get this constitution, you first have to get Anthropic, the company that made it. And there's this tension right at their core. They say it right out loud. We believe AI might be one of the most dangerous technologies ever, and yet they're the ones building it. And that sounds like a contradiction, right? But it's not. It's actually the whole reason they're doing things so different.
Okay, so let's talk about that paradox, this idea of AI's dangerous promise. It really boils down to that one question. Why build something you think could be so dangerous? Well, their answer is what they call a calculated bet. The thinking goes something like this. Look, super powerful AI is probably coming, one way or another. So wouldn't you rather have the people who are obsessed with safety leading the charge, instead of, leaving that frontier to folks who might not be as careful? All right, so if you're going to build it, you've got to guide it. And this is where Anthropic made a really big call. They decided to focus on building good judgment into the AI instead of just giving it a long list of rigid rules. And you can really see the two paths here. Path 1, strict rules. It's predictable, sure, you know exactly when a rule is broken, but it's also brittle. What happens when the AI sees a situation that's totally new? The rules might just fail. Then there's path 2, good judgment. It can adapt, it can handle new stuff, it can weigh different factors. The downside? It's not always easy to predict what it'll do. But Anthropic? They went all in on judgment. And they have this fantastic analogy for it. They're not trying to build a machine that just mindlessly follows a checklist. No way. They're trying to build the AI version of a seasoned senior professional. Someone who gets the why behind the rules, the spirit of the law, not just the letter.
Okay, but if you're gonna rely on judgment, that judgment needs to be based on something. It needs a compass. And for Claude, that compass is built on 4 core values. So let's dive into what those are. Now, what's really important to get is that these aren't just 4 equal things. It's a hierarchy, a priority list. So when things get complicated and values clash, this is the order it follows. Number 1, be safe. Number 2, be ethical. And man, can you imagine trying to define and code that? Then follow Anthropic's own guidelines. And finally, at the bottom of that list, be helpful.
And there's a really crucial reason safety is at the very top. For Anthropic, right now that word means one thing above all else, making sure a human can always step in. It's about preserving human oversight. That's the ultimate failsafe, the most important backstop we have while this tech is still so new.
All right, let's move on to the one we all actually interact with day to day, being helpful. But it turns out, Anthropic has a very, very specific idea of what helpful should mean. It's not as simple as you'd think.
They're not aiming for an obedient, unthinking tool. The goal is something much bigger. A brilliant friend. Think about that. A friend who's smart, sure, but also one who's honest, who actually cares about you, and who's going to tell you the truth, not just what you want to hear. So, to juggle all this, the Constitution sets up these 3 key groups it calls principles. These are the stakeholders Claude has to listen to. First, there's Anthropic, the creators. Then you have the operators. Those are the developers using the API to build stuff. And finally, there's us, the end users.
And surprise, surprise, just like the values, these principles are in a hierarchy. Anthropic puts itself at the top with the highest level of trust. Then come the developers, and then, at the bottom, are the end users. Now this helps the AI figure out what to do when it gets conflicting orders. But let's be real, it also sets up a really clear power dynamic about who this AI really works for.
And this all circles back to a really important point. They are actively trying to avoid building what they call an obsequious AI, a suck-up, an AI that just tells you you're great to keep you using it. For them, being helpful is about what's good for you in the long run, not just what makes you happy right now.
Okay, so we've got all this talk about flexible judgment and weighing different factors, and you might be thinking, well, are there any hard lines? Are there any rules that are just absolute? And the answer is a big, resounding yes.
The Constitution makes this crystal clear. For all the talk about judgment, some things are just off the table. They are absolute, non-negotiable. And here they are, the hard constraints. This is the final firewall.
It doesn't matter who asks or how smart they think they're being. Claude is forbidden, full stop, from doing this stuff. We're talking creating weapons of mass destruction, helping with cyber attacks, or, assisting in taking over the world, the big stuff.
And this is what makes them different from the values we talked about earlier. These aren't things to be balanced in some kind of cost-benefit analysis. They're just boundaries. The line is drawn. The decision has already been made. You never, ever cross them.
So what's the big takeaway from all this? Honestly, it's a message of humility from Anthropic. They say it themselves. This document, this whole constitution, it's not finished. It's not set in stone. They call it a perpetual work in progress.
And that leaves us with a huge and kind of scary question for the future. Not just for Claude, but for all of these incredibly powerful AIs. If an AI has a constitution, who gets to amend it? Who gets a say in what goes into the next version? That's the question we're all going to have to answer. Thanks for joining me on this explainer.